Right. Well, thank you all for introducing yourselves. I'm really excited to be in this community with you all tonight where I can learn from you all as well. Like being newer in the industry, I've been deeply immersed in learning about resumes and how to present myself in a job search recently. But I'm sure we will all be learning from each other and sharing tips along the way. But Remy and I have put together a presentation that I will just start sharing now with some of the tips that will help us in our resumes. And Remy, does it look good or is it doing the weird thing?
It looks beautiful. You did good.
Awesome. So we just did the introductions, getting to know each other a little bit. Hopefully we can continue to do that throughout as well. Like we're open to making this a conversation. And I appreciate people sharing a bit about what in particular they're hoping to learn from tonight too. We're going to go through some resume tips, what recruiters are looking for, some talent development specific skills and language to use. And then we're hoping to have some time, depending on how we're all feeling and what we brought with us, some time to actually live review each other's resumes. Because we are a small group, we will probably do that all together for anyone who is brave enough to offer to share their resume for feedback live with the group. So if no one really wants to do that, we have a plan B that we could work on instead, but we're hoping that one or more of you have brought a draft of a resume that you'd like to have just this group opportunity to have some new eyes on it to give you some feedback. And then at the end, we'll do a quick debrief and have some more time to talk. We'll also have a chance together before we do reviewing each other's resumes to look at a sample resume and just kind of critique it to practice what that would look like. So jumping right in, I was trying to find like a more inspirational quote. I don't know if this one is super relevant, but I was just trying to think about like the idea of redoing your resume and then redoing it again and tweaking it for different job roles that you're applying to. It's a very tedious process and it can be very frustrating. It's not a glamorous part of job hunting, and job hunting in general is not very fun. But I kind of wanted to ground us back in this idea that we are doing this work for something that is a bigger goal, a bigger dream, like thinking about a more exciting, more fulfilling, more healthy lifestyle that we could find through a new role, through a role that's a better fit, moving towards that like dream that we have in our head of what that role could look like. I kind of try to tie that back to that's why we're doing the resume, to help us get towards that next step that will be a better move for us overall. So dreaming, after all, is a form of planning. A resume writing is very much part of the active planning process, but it's part of this kind of bigger idea of moving towards something that's more fulfilling in our lives. Hold on one second. So we're going to watch a video right now that is a recruiter going through some resumes, kind of giving her tips on what she's really looking for and when she's briefly scanning what's standing out to her. So once it starts playing, if someone could just give me a thumbs up that you can hear it, I will let it roll from there.
Sure. Here's a big one. They misspelled education. So it's education. When I look at a resume and I'm evaluating it, there are a number of things I look for right away that I just want to cross off the list. When I initially look at this resume, the first thing that I'm looking at is I'm trying to figure out why the education is at the top. When you're farther along in your career, the most important selling points should be further up at the top. While the degrees are nice, they go at the bottom now. I don't need to know you were on the dance team. It's not relevant to what you're doing today, I'm pretty sure. I also don't need to know your GMATs. These dots are subjective. Who's grading you? What's the scale here? What is this supposed to tell me? I know a little bit about this and a lot about that. I would much rather have proficient and expert and have the names of these. So I just found out that underneath this lovely piece of tape is actually a photo of the person. Unless you are a TV personality, you require a headshot as part of your role, there is absolutely no reason why you should have a picture of your face. They don't care that you like Dave Matthews Band. So quick glance at this. Looks like a solid resume, actually. This early on in a career, I expect to only see bullets and to only see a few for each role. So I don't have a problem with that. The one thing that does bother me is there's no punctuation. I just want periods after them, just to make it look like a sentence. I'm not a huge fan of this. I think it just throws it off. We know that recruiters look for 6 pieces of specific information in those 6 seconds, and this makes it challenging for me to find all that information. Having one color here is, I think, okay. I would just make sure that it's easy to read. I think the orange actually is a little challenging on a white background, so maybe that's not the color to go with. Here's a big one. They misspelled education. So it's education. So that's a problem. Okay, the first thing I think of when I see this is that it's an eye chart. It's a test because it's really challenging to read because the font's so small. Someone's going to look at this and go cross-eyed.
All right, so those were some quick and dirty first reactions from that resume expert. One thing I want to point out, oops, sorry, now it's gonna play.
Here's a
There we go. I'll go back to that slide in a second. One thing I wanted to point out, something we were talking about when coming up with the content for this workshop is that a lot of resume tips are not necessarily controversial, but people have strong opinions and different people have differing opinions. So like one of the things she pointed out was that she wanted to see periods and the bullet points should be sentences. That's one thing I've never done on a resume and really don't often see and hadn't heard before. So I think one thing to keep in mind, our content is sticking to kind of the more general, universally or almost universally accepted, like good ideas to go by, but there's always going to be differing opinions and you're going to have to make personal choices along the way from those differing opinions. But she also mentioned in the video that recruiters will spend 6 seconds looking at 6 pieces of information. So I think Eric mentioned that there's like 12 seconds. I guess the latest research is that it's actually 6 seconds that a recruiter spends scanning your resume. And when I looked it up after, these are those main 6 pieces of information that they're really looking for. So they're looking at your name, your current title and company, your current role, start and end dates, previous title and company, previous role, start and end dates, and your education. And one thing we, like Remy mentioned, and we'll talk about is there is some room. I think conventional wisdom is that you have to just keep the exact title of your current role as the title on your resume. But I think there is some room to make it more relevant to what you're looking for while still being honest, because that is really the first thing that recruiters are looking at to see if they're going to go ahead and read more in the bullet points after that. Remy, was there anything else from the video you wanted to comment on?
No, I don't think it was good.
Okay. So when it comes to like those core things that seem on the less debatable side of what are the essential elements of a resume, I think clear formatting is really important, keeping it simple and easy to read and skim. So some of those resume formats that were in the video, like the one that had a lot of graphics and had different columns, I've heard are not a great idea, especially if you're uploading your resume to an ATS or an applicant tracking system. When you're using a template that came from like Canva or something that's more formatted, sometimes it doesn't read it properly when you have the columns, especially like there's a skill section on the side. So having just a clear single page format with minimal color seems to be most often what is recommended, unless you're in some kind of creative or design field, then there might be more room for that added design and color element. Next thing is to make sure you have your contact information. And I thought that a not debatable point was that you should put your current city. That was one thing that Remy added in after that maybe you shouldn't, especially if you're looking for remote roles. I've heard in general that even for remote positions, a recruiter needs to know which state you live in because they can only offer employment in some states, even if they are remote. But Remy, did you want to add in that tidbit you heard about not putting your city necessarily?
Yeah, like there's nothing saying you won't move. And if you put your city and that is a requirement that you have to be somewhere, if you're someone might think that you're not willing to move. So it was told by me from a recruiter that it's up to you if you want to put it in or not. And even you can go a step further and not put the city in that your jobs were in, which seems a bit too wild for me personally. But it's something to think if you have put a lot of resumes out there and you're not getting anything, maybe that's something you could change up as the city and see if you get better responses.
Yeah, one thing that seems pretty universal is to not include a photo and to not have your age, but also not a way to calculate your age. Like you don't need to have the year you graduated college or your high school information or anything like that. The next big piece is your experience. And we're going to talk a little bit more how experience can include lots of different things. Like I didn't just say professional experience, because I think there are definitely ways to incorporate volunteer and other outside of an official job title experience as well. It's important to keep your titles honest, but that there is some room that we'll get into about how to make them most reflective of what your experience actually was, without like fudging a title or a job that you never really did, but crafting it to really represent what you have done. And then in that experience being selective. So you do not need to list every job you ever had, just the ones that are relevant to the job you are applying for. And it's also recommended to keep your experience current from the past 10 to 15 years and not necessarily list the experience from beyond that timeline. Right, strong action verbs in those, once you get into the bullet points, having those action verbs that show what you did and how you made impact is really important. And as much as possible, trying to include numbers to show that impact in those bullet points. So trying to quantify, not just listing a job description for what you did, but really how you did it and how you made impact while you were doing it. Then the education, of course, it's going to be at the bottom unless you are a recent graduate, bottom of the resume. And like I said before, you don't need to have that graduation year listed. And I think the last biggest essential element that came to mind for me was making sure that you proofread, making sure there are no typos, but also making sure that your formatting is consistent, like that the way you bold things, italicize, underline is consistent throughout your different sections, your headings look the same, and that it's just really easy to breeze through and there's not distracting elements that would take away from the content. So one thing when thinking about in particular, applying to talent development roles, it's important to think about what is your area of focus for these jobs you're applying for and being able to tailor your resume to that. So knowing that talent development is not just one job title, but there are different areas within it. Of course, some positions will incorporate multiple of these, but just knowing what are the skills that are most relevant to the area in particular you are looking at and how you can communicate that clearly on your resume. And Remy, I know I handed off to you from here, but was there anything else you wanted to mention on this slide?
Nope, I think that's great.
Okay, so you can just let me know when you want me to change the slides now.
Sounds good. So I think usually what we do is we create a couple resumes that will sort of go to, like, maybe I'll do one for instructional design, one that's more focused towards my onboarding experience, and one around my training experience. That might be how I do it for myself. But if I'm applying to like L&D coordinator role, and all those things might fall under them, or it might be more specific. An L&D coordinator role for one company and what they put in the job description can be completely different than the other company. And one might be more focused on instructional design, and the other one might be focused more on coaching skills and helping managers and coach them up or upskill other employees. So even if the title says that they're the same, please read the job descriptions and tailor your resume based on what the actual job description is, not on what the title is. So that's sort of our little tip. And then the other thing with all these job titles is there's so many more than just these out there. So if you've been only looking for something that resembles a title that you've had in the past, or that you think lines up, like I'll use instructional designer, you're only looking for instructional designer roles that have that in the job heading, you're going to miss out on so many other jobs to apply for. So expand your keywords in your search is our tip. Okay.
I also want to add, we will be sharing these slides after. So some of the next slides are heavy with lists of words and things that you might want to use. So we will share them with you after.
Yeah. So here's sort of like in the nitty gritty of talent development, what do we need on our resumes, right? One thing is if you've had a sort of a summary header that you've called it in the past or objective, we are going to remove that. We're not calling that anymore. Instead, we're going to put in the position as your header of what the job titles that you're applying for, or calling it, like for myself, I'll say talent development professional. That's more generic, or whatever the exact position title is, that's your header. And underneath it is going to be your branding statement, which is we're going to get to into how to write that branding statement. So don't worry. So it's like what you've written for your objectives before, but it's a little bit more tailored to you. And it can be more personal. We can even put I statements in there. Other things, especially if you haven't updated your resume in a while, is I think there used to be a trend before where we just write things that were part of our role, our daily tasks, things that we had to do. But now the resume is about showing off how you're a rock star in your job. Your bullet points are about what you've accomplished, what you're proud of, what people would say you're amazing at, because those are the things that you're going to be able to show the impact. I did this thing and it led to this, and I can show it by this. So your 3 to 5 bullet points for each of your roles is going to have to show how you're exceptional. You can add, and we'll show you in the template in our good resume example, a one-line summary of what your role was underneath the company title and job title before you list your bullet points. So you're still saying what your role was, but the only things you're highlighting in the bullet points are your super extra special moments in that role. And then add your portfolio, link it in, especially if you have a personal website, or you can show some of your work somehow and highlight it, or I don't know how you're going to link it, but put it out there. That's one extra thing that you can do over maybe another job applicant. And there are some free websites or free hosting sites as well that you can link to. Another thing is having a skills section is really important. That helps with our keywords when we have the ATS looking through it. And it lets recruiters know right away that the skills that they're looking for in the job description match up with what you have, and they could just do a check mark on that. And we're going to give you a list of different skills that you could put out there. I have, I think, about 10 on mine. So I would say at least 5 skills, maybe go up to 10, 15, whatever you think fills it appropriately with the number of years experience and what you're really good in, what your niches are, right? So we want to make sure there's a skill section on there. The other thing that we sort of said was that job title. If it's not representing you and all the hats that you wore, and we know in talent development, they make us do a lot that's not necessarily explicit in the job description or that reflects the title that we had, right? So we want to change that. And if you're feeling like, ooh, I feel really dishonest in doing that, there are a couple workarounds. You could tell the company that you changed the title, the one you've applied for, and just say, you know what, it wasn't reflective of what I did. I just want to let you know I tweaked it a bit so you could actually get a feeling for what my past job was. That's if you feel comfortable with that. Another thing you could do is talk to whoever would be your reference at the past company. Say, hey, what do you think about me just changing my job title on here? And if someone calls you to ask about it, that you'd be okay saying that's what it is. They could say, great, and that's done. Or you could just not say anything, and that's fine too. And if they question you on it, then you could be honest and say what's happening. If you're currently in your role and you know that you're leaving soon, or you know they wouldn't give you a promotion or a raise, instead ask for a job title switch. If they're not going to pay you different, ask them to make it more specific to what you do so it looks better when you leave that job. So an example is we put in like a student success facilitator. I use this for my past job. And I'm not like tied on how I've rechanged the titles, but we thought it was an okay example. So you could say something, you could list that. So if I was called a student success facilitator for engagement was my official title. Instead, I write that out and I say adjacent employee engagement coordinator or acting employee experience specialist. So you can change it up. You could say adjacent, you could say acting and still have the same title there, or you could just scrap the original title that you had in your role and just say employee engagement coordinator. or engagement coordinator, whatever you feel. And I know, Amanda, you're sort of in that spot. So maybe this is a great point to just pause. Do you want to help us to help you brainstorm some ideas and how you could write it out?
Sure, if people don't mind. I guess what seems like it would make the most sense is to maybe write acting head of people operations. It feels a little dicey to me, especially because my LinkedIn won't match. If I update my LinkedIn, my current employer will notice. So that's, I think, what makes me nervous. It doesn't seem dishonest. But if the person looking at the resume looks at the LinkedIn, it might look dishonest, is what I'm worried about.
Ooh, I do think they need to reflect or at least somehow have that same wording. So maybe changing your LinkedIn to have that, sort of dash and say that as well. Because if your job asks you about it, you could just say, I went to a conference and people didn't know what I was talking about. Don't know. That's one way. I guess
that is a tricky thing to, oh, sorry, Remy, were you saying something else?
No, I was just going to say it's a hard thing to coordinate matching the two up when it's so public, but I like the title change that you have.
Right. Maybe if the bullets, I mean, if I already have the bullets of what I'm doing and it's clearly more people operations stuff than learning and development stuff. Maybe if those match and they look at it, it'll make enough sense that they'll be willing to have the conversation with me, but I don't know.
Yeah, and I think the first stage of when it's just like a recruiter seeing the role, trying to communicate what you really did do to get past that stage, then once you're having conversations with them, you're able to flesh it out more. I could see there being some confusion between like the resume and the LinkedIn. I don't know. I've applied to, I think, 100 jobs in the past 9 months. And I have the feature on LinkedIn where I can see who has viewed my profile. And I've had so few people view my LinkedIn profile after I've applied to a job, even once I've gotten an interview, until I'm in the later stages. So I think the priority when you are submitting resumes to applications is what you have on the resume. I'm sure they will do some checking, but at that point you should be able to kind of explain yourself and talk about it more.
Yeah, that's a really great point. They definitely won't look at my LinkedIn if they dismiss the resume because it seems like too much of a stretch of a position.
That's true. Are there any other ideas around that title, or anyone else who's thinking about a job title that we could talk through a little bit?
I don't think there's anything wrong in saying acting, and even on LinkedIn. Some people are just super into LinkedIn and staying current, whether they're looking for a job or not. Unless you know the culture of where you work. And
I have the premium right now too, and I can see that my boss has been looking at my LinkedIn like every 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
well,
I think he'd notice.
Yeah, and just as I don't know, I think something happens within us when a company's not being straight and they're not doing what they need to do, which is change your role and give people the role that they're doing and pay people for the role that they're doing. Something happens within us and we can be embarrassed and take that on. And I really encourage you in your job search, don't take that on. Here's what I've been doing. Here's what the company, if someone asks, well, why is this, that's on them. That's not on you. And so there's just, there's
good point, Susan. Thank you.
Yeah, that any embarrassment about any of that role confusion and title confusion, that's on the company and the company culture and the people ops department. That's not on you at all.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's all about being able to honestly, like, representing yourself in an honest way to what you have done and being able to explain it and talk it through. Like, it's one thing to, like, one thing I've seen a lot of teachers are leaving teaching right now and are trying to get into instructional design. And some of them have gotten, I think, not such good advice to change their title from teacher to instructional designer and just try to position their experience as, I have done this work by creating content as a teacher, but it was instructional design. I think that's a stretch. That's not really what they're doing, and it will create big question marks down the line when they say, please tell us about your experience as an instructional designer in the interview. And that's when you have to say, oh, it was with students. And that's when you can't really back up what you've written. But if the experience you're going to be speaking to is backing up that role that is more descriptive, then I think it will work out in the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything, any other thoughts or comments on that?
You know, I just, in my world, it was quite common for people to ask for a new title when they weren't getting a promotion or a raise. So, you know, I know, Amanda, we worked together in a previous, we did a TED session together, and I know it's, you work for a family, right?
Yeah.
So they may have kind of a different culture than I've been accustomed to, but
Yeah.
it was a common ask. So,
Mhm.
but I feel your pain of being watched by your boss. That's very bizarre.
So weird.
Yeah, that's very frequent checking.
Which
So-
I can't mention that I see, because then he would know that it's premium.
That.
Nice.
It's also common in
Obviously, I mean, it sounds like he might be nervous to lose you. So maybe you have more leverage than you think.
Maybe it's true.
Oh, and there was one other thing I was going to add, the title part on LinkedIn, like your headline is different than like the job titles you have in your experience. So I've seen some people put that more aspirational or more accurately descriptive title that's more general or broad in their headline. But then when it goes into the breakdown of their experience lower down on their profile, that's when they have the listed title from their current role.
That's a good point.
All right, I think there are a couple more points on this slide, right, Ernie?
Yep, just one more, and that's to make sure that you're using talent development keywords and like very specific to our industry and field in your keywords, and also when you're in your bullet points, and how to apply them to adult learners. So things like ATD, mention things that show you know how to do the job. That was my last point there.
And one other comment I had on the skills section, one thing I've heard, especially when it comes to mentioning, well, the skills that Remy was talking about is more like the talent development on the job skills. But if you're mentioning like tools that you've used, I've heard that if you just have things listed, but then they don't actually come up in your bullets, that it can have kind of a disconnect for a recruiter. Like if you've listed a skill, but then they can't connect it back to one of your jobs and see like, oh, this is where they use that and how. That it isn't as impactful as like having that kind of called out section where you can quickly have someone scan your skills, but then also spelling it out more within your job bullet points too.
So it sounds like no one's actually just transitioning into L&D. Everyone's sort of already in this. So maybe this isn't the most relevant slide. So we'll go real quick. Just if there's anything that you're looking to switch into and you need experience, there are a couple different sites out there where you can do portfolio work like Catchafire, Taproot Foundation. You can volunteer with the local ATD chapter, say what skills you're looking for. I am sure we will need help with things. So if you're looking to do stuff like that, and yeah, the other thing is not really to promote that you're in transition or to apply. I don't think that that applies to you all and anything you said, so maybe not. Just when you're changing words, if you need to do things like we talked about, teacher to maybe instructional designer, instead of parents, say stakeholder, instead of students, say learner. So there are a couple things, especially if you're going to corporate, use the words that they would use in corporate is our tip. And then again, I guess we're all in L&D. So just, you know, you have the skills, you've done the events, you've trained new people. Those are all things that are part of L&D. So I think maybe we'll skip that. So we'll have more time to do resumes with you all.
Yeah, sounds good.
Some things though to think about is where talent development is going in the future and how you can upskill now or highlight the work that you've already done that hit on some of these topics in your resume. So like we said at the beginning, you've been using Zoom, right? Put that on there. Put down that you know how to collaborate remotely, how to work remotely on a project. Definitely say that when you're describing the impact or whatever your accomplishment is, work in that you did it remote. Also show your understanding of AI, VR, AR, and how it can be used in L&D. So trying to fit that in, because that will be the next next big thing that people are looking in resumes, because L&D pros are going to have to start actually, upskilling our employees to be able to use these skills, right? So they want to make sure people know how to use it. Gamification, micro-learning, credentialing, that digital mindset, coaching, and knowing how to like use data to show impact. Those are all things that would be great little like nuggets to have on your resume if you've already done stuff like that to highlight.
Did anyone want to clarify any of these points? Some of them I had to, so I don't know. Is anything everything clear there? Okay, cool.
So then we get into the branding statement. And this is our new thing that we're going to put on our resume if you don't already have it. And it's just saying who you are. So there's a little bit of a formula here. And again, you have the slides afterwards, so you can go and practice this. You can use the first person, you can do third person, you can just like avoid all personal things and write it like how you would a normal resume with like, did this, and not even say I or name. But you're pretty much trying to put out there who you are, like what your experiences, your strengths are, and what your values are, and the values of your future company that you want to work for, showing them that you understand what they're about and that you are a fit for them. So this is a great little thing. Think of this as your elevator pitch, but just a little shortened and written. But it's the same as what you would do in a networking situation.
Yeah, good to have that version written and then ready to say out loud all the time as well, which will be slightly different, but very similar.
Yeah. So just after this workshop and you see the slides, just take a couple minutes and create that. These are some talent development skills. So if you're looking for things to put in that skill section of your resume, these are great ones. So again, in the slides, you can just copy and paste. And then we also have some resume verbs for you. That you can use as well, trying to just make sure. I would steer away from saying things that are like admin, like I created this or I just hosted this, like, no, really, you let it, you went further on things. Don't be humble is what I'm trying to say. Show everything that you've got and that you did, and take ownership for it. So with that, if anyone else has anything they want to add, or Nicole is going to tell us some tips for how to find those keywords.
Oh yeah, so one tip that I found on LinkedIn was how once you have honed in on that role that you are looking for and you have a handful of job descriptions that you have found for that role, you can copy and paste the content of the job description into a word cloud creator. There's a bunch of different free versions online, and see which words really start to stick out. One thing I'll say, I tried this was for a learning and development program manager that I put in some different job descriptions. You kind of have to tweak it because what ends up happening is the biggest words are like skills and very generic things like qualifications, experience, things that are not specific to the job title. So what I did was I went in and deleted some of those words. And also you see a lot of things that have hyphens here to make them one word, because communication and skills would be split up and treated as two separate words. So I put dashes in between a few things that I knew I wanted to come up together. And not that you need to create this pretty word cloud that you're going to show to anybody, but it was just a helpful exercise to do this, to really start to see the patterns of, okay, in these 5 different job descriptions, they kept bringing up these same skills repeatedly. And this is something that I want to make sure I have in my bullet points. So whether it's that you're actually doing the word cloud thing or finding another strategy to just go through and see what are those recurring skills that people are asking for, that you want to make sure you reflect the same kind of language in your bullet points. And then another tip, and in the resource document that we're going to share at the end, there's the article where this formula came from, but it's the XYZ formula for how to format your bullet points. And that's trying to format as much as you can in your bullet points, saying what you accomplished, how that was measured, like getting in those numbers and metrics to show your impact, and then at the end, what you did. So you're really starting out strong by saying what it was that you accomplished at the beginning. And that's the first thing that someone will see as they're skimming it. And then you go into more detail throughout the bullet point, but making sure to show the impact and explaining this, like the by doing Z would be that place where you're plugging in some of those skills or tools that you used, like not just having it in the skill section, but showing where in your job you did that. And then I have a couple examples of that here. So an example of doing that well would be drove operational excellence across North American and global teams, reducing time to proficiency by 60% by fostering team development and individual coaching. So that's kind of hitting each of those parts, whereas a more common and less impactful bullet point might say something more generic, like conducting assessment meetings twice a month to ensure success and adjusting training methods. That doesn't really show what you did and how it was impactful in making an improvement. So I think I have found this really hard to do in each of the bullet points, having like hitting each of these points and having metrics and numbers to back everything up, but just trying to include as much of that as you can so that it's kind of, the numbers also really pop out when someone is skimming. So something to think about when you're redoing your bullets.
And I'll just add here, if you haven't left your job already, or you have access to like that data around a couple things, that was one regret I had in my past job, that I wrote a couple things down, but it was all on my work computer. And when I left, I hadn't updated my resume. And all of a sudden I was like, how many people came to that event? What was the survey responses? How many of them like grew that skill that we were measuring and tracking? So I would just say, when we talk about how often do we update things, either have a running list of the impact that you're making, or update it every single time you like finish a project or get some new data to show the work that you can do.
Yeah, I've heard that some people have just like a recurring event in their calendar quarterly or however often to remember to look back and update your resume or in another running document where you have your accomplishments, just so when it is time that you're looking for something again, that you have that to rely on. And I think also good advice I've gotten is that it is not that they need to know whether it was a 60% or 63% change. And if you get that wrong, like you're making it up and now not being truthful, you're not always going to have an exact number that is directly pulled from some report, but that you can use these kind of ballpark numbers that you know to be true overall to help really make your impact pop. But it's not like someone's going to be going into fact check and making sure that you have the exact percentage that was what happened. All right, so we are now going to look at a couple example resumes that we have for you, and then we will have time to look at each other's. And I'm looking at the time. I really want to make sure we do have time, probably more time to look at each other's resumes. So I think we should go a little bit quickly through these sample resumes.
I agree. I think that's good.
So I'm just going to share the first one. Do we still want to do both for me?
Yeah, I think we just want to show, yeah. We'll
Okay.
do real quick. Maybe we won't do the annotate tool. We'll just show the bad resume, and maybe I can sort of talk through things that are wrong to it.
Okay, so this was our example of a bad resume, or just there are things that can be improved. This is a sample resume, not a real person. But
Well, I Bella Swan. Okay, so I had to make a Twilight reference just because I really wanted to. I mean, who else can we just roast, right? So Bella didn't do good here. First off, she put her actual address.
I guess maybe just to like get some more voices in the room. Does anyone see things that are before you jump for me? What do you notice that could be fixed on this resume based on some of the things we've talked about? And I would caution you, don't like go too far into the nitty-gritty of all the bullets, but just kind of looking at it overall, what jumps out at you, what could be improved.
I don't see a skills list.
Perfect. Yeah, missing.
I personally would do a much shorter summary of qualifications. That's kind of a long paragraph, in my opinion.
Okay. I do think some people will have this long for their branding statement, but it totally depends on your experience and who you are. If you sort of like, you know, the longer you work there, the more words you get.
Anything else that jumps out?
She put her year for her master's. I don't know that that actually indicates age very much since it's a master's. There could have been a gap, but
That's true. That was one of the things we were pointing out, but I think that it is different for graduate degrees.
Yeah, but it's odd to have it for the masters and not the BA, so I. would-
right. That's why I thought it was, that's what stood out to me.
It looks like she forgot, or, it's just not consistent.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All the numbers have to do with number of students.
Hmm.
Which sometimes, if somebody's trying to hire you for a global training role, that might be important. But it's more focused on number of students than impact on the business.
Yeah, that's a great call. That was
Yeah.
the main thing we were trying to say with the bullets was it doesn't actually show the impact. What did doing that number of trainings do?
Yeah.
How did those students, what happened to them afterwards? Okay.
Yeah. Definitely. And there was also the Washington is spelled wrong.
Yeah. And not to don't do your street address, her email's unprofessional. And I think those are and the other thing that's missing here, well, the header that says summary of qualifications, remember we're calling that the job title that they're applying for now. And then also it doesn't have that summary sentence of what the role was underneath the company name. And something that's a little different that I haven't updated on my resume yet is now they're asking that it's the company first, job title underneath, and then your summary sentence, and then your bullet points. So in that template we're going to give you, it does list that out.
Okay, those are the main ones for this one. Should I go to the other one?
Yeah, let's see the good stuff, which I found a spelling mistake that I made after the fact. But
Oh, on the good one. That's all right.
Was it hard to leave Washington misspelled? In your example.
I bet,
well,
yeah.
we had it in a Word doc originally. We're like, oh, this is too easy. Got a PDF it, but yeah, it felt wrong.
Okay. So this is a better version. Sorry if the font is small. Hopefully you can see. All right, so what are we noticing here?
The formatting is really inconsistent.
Yeah, I feel like this was supposed to be a good one, but the formatting and the caps on some things got a little weird. But this one does do better with showing the month and then the year for some of the jobs, which is what we should be showing. It
Yeah.
also shows that impact way better.
Yeah, I think I'm noticing some of the capitalization now in bolding. I think because we transferred between Word, Google Docs, PDF, something got lost in there. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah,
Make sure wherever you're working on your resume that once you save it in a different format to submit it, everything is still looking as you intended.
So
Yeah, for me, I mean, going back and forth from center to left justified, center to left justified, that is just something that sticks out for me. I mean, just keep it all left justified or one way for that consistency. But
yeah, agreed. Make it easy on the eyes. Well, some good points on this is the LinkedIn's there, the portfolio's listed here. The branding statements better and at least has a better title. We got the skills or areas of expertise. It has that summary statement. They included volunteer and paid positions. And this was a bit better with the years. I'm not sure if you noticed on the other one, it had things that were like, I think 20, 25 years before that weren't as relevant. So this was a little bit better on a couple things.
And the portfolio is also linked at the bottom. I think that could be something if it was formatted differently in the top too, just to draw more attention to it. And one super quick tip I'll give if you haven't heard this before, if you are putting your LinkedIn URL in your resume on LinkedIn, you can edit your URL. If it looks like a really long URL with random numbers and letters, you can go into your LinkedIn profile and change that to make it just your name. So it looks a lot better when it's on something like your resume.
Perfect. Well, then I think let's jump into looking at everyone's resumes, and we'll try and give, I think we can do 5 minutes a person. So what we're gonna do is you're gonna have to either screen share to show it or send a share it in the chat somehow. And we're gonna have it be that we're all looking at it, and we are recording this. So if you need to go back and hear the feedback people are giving or look in the chat, I hope it's good. I will make sure to save the chat before we leave, or take notes as you go. So as you see someone's resume, pretend you're a recruiter, go through in the chat or verbally, just write every little thing that you see. We're gonna just try and give as much feedback as possible.
And some of those main things we can be looking for is like, is the formatting clear, easy to skim in the first look through? Is all of that essential information, like those main points, easy to find? Are there strong bullets with action words, proof of impact? Are you getting in those talent development skills and that particular language? And are there any like typos or things that are quick fixes too? So, and if you don't feel comfortable sharing, don't worry, we don't need to do everyone, but anyone who wants to have this chance, we want to provide it. And then also, Remy, did you want to just clarify before people are sharing their resume what the recording will be used for? Is it just to send to participants who are here tonight, or will it be made available to others?
That's a good point. I think it goes on that member backend when you log into the website. I think that's where it gets listed. So actually, yeah, if you don't want it recorded as people give feedback, we can just pause
We
it.
can always pause it, yeah.
You let us know what your comfort level is and if that's helpful or not to be able to go back and view it.
Oh,
Okay.
okay, we have one in the chat. So Susan, I think that means you can go
You're
first.
So if everyone pulls it open on their screen, if you're able to, if you're not, we can screen share and look at it that way too.
Yeah, that'd be great if you can. I'm still trying to screenshot mine.
Sure.
Yeah, it might be easier just if we're all able to just be in the Zoom screen. So Remy, could you?
Yep,
share?
I'm downloading it and then I'm going to open it different. So
We can't attach a file in chat, can we?
I think you can, or if you want to email it, we can screen share for you.
Okay.
Which
Yeah.
can put that in. I can put it in quick.
Do you want to look at that and I can share Susan's then, Remy?
Oh,
I have it
okay.
open
I just got Susan's, I think. So hold on, I think I can do it.
Okay,
I
so
just
Remy can put her
downloaded it.
email in the chat if anyone needs to send it to her to open up next.
I'm going to make it go away bar so I can make it bigger.
Thank you. I have old eyeballs. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so on the bottom right, it looks like you can zoom it.
Oh, okay. I kept like this Zoom header keeps going in my. Okay. Ooh.
Maybe if we can just see at least like half the page at a time, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds good. I'll scroll down in a minute or two. Okay. So again, well, I guess I want to have my chat bar open so I can see.
And if it is still too hard to see, you can open it through the link she sent in the chat too.
Did this mess up all your formatting, Susan? Or is this, I didn't look at what it was originally in Dropbox when I downloaded it.
Fine.
Look correct?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay.
I am a wordy sister, so any recommendations for making it less wordy are always welcome.
Okay. Sounds good. If anyone wants to start talking, go for it. I can jump in, whatever we need.
Just one suggestion I have on how to make it less wordy, not specific words, but one thing that I do when I'm editing for someone is print it out and or do it digitally, but highlight as you go the words that actually stand out to you in a positive way, and then just hand it back to them, because the things that aren't highlighted obviously didn't. So kind of I scroll through the things that I'm interested in, I highlight, and then it helps see what wasn't.
One thing that stands out to me right away is it's just a little bit unclear, the transition from the intro paragraph to the skills. Like you might need a title, whether you say skills or core competencies or something, just to kind of highlight that that's what that is a list of.
Yeah, I actually have a header on mine that reads summary and skills. So that would kind of make it clear what that section is about.
Oh, and I see Remy put in the chat to increase the size of your name. Yes, I think that would be good too.
I think your branding statement, deep experience, let's get more specific there. How much experience is that? What are the years?
Mhm.
I'm trying not to be old.
Well, I mean, at some point
In
you
this
can
case,
brag
it's
about your
like-
experience, right? Like,
Yeah.
I can only say a certain number of years, which is going to get judged. And then it's like you get judged on either side of the spectrum for things. But I think sometimes more experience, especially in this economy, is going to look better than
Mm.
someone who's a bit fresher, right? You
Agreed.
know your way around L&D. You know how to do things. So share
Yeah,
that.
I had an interview with a recruiter yesterday, and she said that companies are pretty excited because they're able to get more experienced talent than they normally do because of the economy.
Interesting.
So I wouldn't be shy about your years on the job. Okay, let's see.
Smaller summaries of your role.
Mhm.
Or did someone already say that? Yeah, make it like one sentence quick. And I don't know about that AKA Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk.
Mhm. Now,
Um,
that means something in this area. It doesn't.
Yeah, I would recognize Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk Amusement Park, but I wonder do you need to say Santa Cruz Seaside Company, or could you say training manager at Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk?
I
hmm.
can do that. Yeah.
They don't really care what the name of the legal name of the company was.
Yeah,
you-
take a line out too.
And I think you want to break it up. So make sure you're saying the name of the company, the location, if you're wanting to share that. Remember, it's that maybe now if you want to say location or not. And then your title underneath it. You don't need to have it all as one line, and then adding just the months at least of your with your employment, not just the years.
Some of the slashes, I don't know if they add value, like massage therapist / massage. You can just pick one, whichever one's most relevant to what you're applying to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where was that part? The massage?
If you go up,
Yeah, low.
just the titles, massage program manager, I would just leave it at that and then take out massage therapist. And same thing with learning and development consultant and instructional designer above it, just whichever one applies more to the role you're.
Okay.
And then I guess I would wonder too if the massage therapy experience was relevant to what you're applying for now. I think it adds in more character, like tells more about your backstory and about yourself, but potentially might be like, oh, I don't know, like a bit distracting from the rest of these experience.
It's a career swerve, but I think it also, for me, it also illustrates that wherever I'm working, I'm involved in training. Wherever I worked, I became the trainer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And without it, it would look like a gap because it is actually what you were doing, not a second job. So I'd leave it in personally.
But I think we could cut out, which really I know hurts to cut things out, but when we look at just dates of things at the call center,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's getting back there.
Pretty far back there. Yeah, and I struggle with that because that was a top 100 company to work for in the US. And boy, did I gain some skills there.
Mhm.
One thing you could do is take off the years and maybe just put, other previous companies.
Mhm.
And that way you can have that name of that top 100 company, but shorten it up and keep it current.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth because I have experience that's relevant, but it's too far in the past. But I did have a small section that said other relevant experience and listed a couple positions just to include them for
Mhm.
the sake of showing how long I've been at it,
Cool.
but not taking up too much space.
Mhm.
Yeah, because and I wonder what everybody thinks about the one-page resume versus 2 pages. I will say, I've been in a position to hire people, and I tend to get frustrated if there were more than 1 page. I kind of wanted to be able to see at a glance, like the education and all of that. So yeah, I don't know, Remy or Nicole, if in your preparation, if you thought about that.
Yes, that is definitely one of those hot button controversial issues or takes that I was talking about at the beginning, that people have very strong positions in both directions. I've heard some people, recruiters, hiring managers say, like, definitely if you have lots of experience, over X years of experience, I don't know what the magic number is, but you definitely are entitled to a second page, just not more than 2, and keep it concise within each of the sections. But then some people say you really want that 1 page, just like you were saying, to be able to see everything at a glance. I don't think there's going to be a good answer, because everyone's going to have a different one. I don't know, Remy, what is
I have a version of my resume that's 1 and 2 pages, and that way when I get to work finally, I'm going to ask the recruiter, which one do you prefer?
Hmm.
Because some of them, well, sometimes you can talk to them before you submit your resume. I guess that's the nice moment when you could ask. But I think I'm gonna try and lean to doing the 1 page. And Susan, looking at yours, I think if we like really pared things down, you could get to that 1 page moment.
Hmm.
There's some potential here if you took some things out and maybe
Exactly.
put them in your LinkedIn a bit more, highlight them in LinkedIn and drive people to that to get that full experience.
Yeah.
That's a
And
thought.
maybe keep a version with all of the bullet points. And then when you're looking at the job description, decide, of the 7 under Davita, which 4 are the most relevant to this job, and keep those, and then eliminate the others.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, to always have a running document that has all of your versions or sections you've ever included, and then being able to draw from that for each role you're applying to.
That idea. Yeah.
Okay, I think we should get moving to keep rotating through. So if there's more things, put it in the chat for Susan, or I mean, maybe message you after. I don't know if people want to do that. But I'm gonna get Courtney's up and running here.
It looks great, Susan.
Yeah.
Very good experience.
Yeah.
Great job.
Really great experience.
Thank you.
And good, brave to go first. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for kicking it off for us.
Good.
Yeah.
I heard some great ideas to play with.
Okay, this is Courtney's. Oh, and you got a 1 pager. Okay,
We're
maybe I'll
still
try.
looking at
I
Susan.
might be selling myself a little short by not adding more
I
detail.
have the same question as you, Courtney. Of like, I want it to be 1 page, but then is it?
I mean,
2?
I'm still seeing Susan's on my screen. Is that what everyone's
Oh,
still seeing?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
my bad. Okay, hold on. Let me share. I was already
Mhm.
looking to Courtney's. Okay, share. Okay, there we go. Looking good.
Oh yeah, nice, neat 1 page. There is something really nice about the 1 page, just having that like snapshot look.
Yeah.
And okay, so right off the bat, let's just change that header of summary and qualifications to even taking that communications culture and people leader. If you want, make that your heading there, or the job title that you're applying to.
Got it. Yeah, it's a good suggestion.
And then did you meant to bold a couple of those things, that first sentence?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. But
I
I
was
don't,
at
it
the
could be
top.
distracting. I'm not sold on whether that's effective or not.
And I think here, put your years experience. You said you had 20 plus years at a
I
company.
do. How did I not put that in there? That's crazy.
One tiny thing, it looks like there's just a couple extra spaces before results oriented.
Mhm.
It's
think
because it's
Justified.
justified.
Um,
Yeah, I know. But I could fix that by just adding another word, I think. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of like to kind of start the document with the full justification. I don't know why. It's just a style thing.
yeah.
Do you want to say planned career break here? Because I feel like you don't need to say that if you
Yeah,
like,
I will probably honestly change that to consultant because I'm going to be doing some consulting. So yeah.
and it's not that long of a gap. Like
Yeah.
I have a 3-year gap because of those work permit shenanigans. And
Mhm.
on it, I'm not putting that I've had a break or anything on there.
Yeah.
I'm listing all the volunteer consulting, or even like, I won't do this, but I know other people who have. They'll write down like their house manager stuff, which I think if done a right way can be nice, but I'm not gonna do that. But yeah, I don't think you're in that space where you need to explain yourself. You put your time in here.
Yeah.
You have a break.
Okay, fair enough. It'll give me more space.
Yeah.
Do you list the, you list the companies anywhere?
Yeah, it's the same company.
Oh,
Same
okay.
company,
I
Yeah.
worked there for almost 20 years.
Maybe instead of underlining the roles you had in them, maybe we need to bulk up that company name so people can see it and put the location next to it. And then,
Yeah,
I don't know, do something different with the title, because that way it's very clear.
right. Maybe reverse the
Mhm.
form. Yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
that's a good idea.
And then for your, the first bullet, kind of the summary statement, I wouldn't make that a bullet. I would make that just a line, and that way it
Mhm.
breaks up the formatting.
Yeah, good
And then
idea.
in that case, you could take out the word results too.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that would give you like 5 more lines to
I
add
know.
in.
I love it.
And I think just trying, I think this is probably going to be the feedback for everyone, says, where can we add more impact? Where can we put more
Yeah.
numbers? And sadly, it does come down to numbers sometimes, even though it's so hard to, at some points, make something like more quantitative than qualitative in learning. But
Yeah.
wherever you can add a couple more things, I would just go for that.
I know. And like you, Remy, I didn't do a good job of collecting all the things I needed. And then
You
I
know,
started writing the resume and I'm like, oh my goodness.
I've gone back to my old coworkers who are my girlfriends, and like we always chat and stuff. And I've been like, did anyone save anything before
Yeah.
we like quit? So they were a bit helpful in filling some gaps, but it's hard.
Yeah, I have an insider who could help me.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe let's swap it up again. And if there's more things for Courtney, put it in the chat or send Courtney a message after. And let's do some more people. Did anyone email? Is that where?
You've got
Yeah,
to
I
retain it.
emailed it to you, but I can also present my screen if it's easier. At least I think I can.
Pull up my Gmail quick. And Eric, you're gonna be ready to go after with yours?
Yeah, you know what I prefer? I prefer to just email it to
Sure.
you.
Yep,
So-
do that.
Do you want to just have Amanda share her screen? I just changed it, so you should be able to.
Yeah, maybe that's easier.
I can do that.
Okay.
And Courtney, I just wanted to mention that I like your formatting. It
Yeah.
seems like the ATS will probably pick up, but still visual, which I appreciate. I hate that Indeed vertical look, but it seems like the only one that the ATS likes. So
Yeah.
I struggle with that. You get a good balance.
Well, so far yours is looking really clean here, Amanda.
Yeah.
Speaking of format, this looks very nice, like visually appealing.
Mm-hmm.
Should I zoom in a little bit? Or-
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think just right off the bat, let's take out profile, get your branding. And oh, you know what? Something weird, Director of Human Resources, put that as instead of summary, make your name center and bigger.
Okay.
And then get your branding statement a little bit more. You can add a little bit more like juiciness to it. You're okay to add another sentence or two.
Maybe people more in the know would know, but for me, ORR protection is not, like ORR is not a acronym I know.
It's the name of the company.
Oh, okay.
Ooh, okay, I see.
Interesting. Wait, can you go back up? Do you have that listed separately somewhere as the company?
No, I
Oh,
have it each. So
Yeah,
if that's
I read
standing
it
out,
as-
you didn't.
I read it as
Sorry.
like part of your
Part of
title.
the title.
It didn't read employer to me.
That is really good to know.
Yeah, I would put that on a separate line. I think Remy said that for someone else too.
And put the location, and then in that template we're giving you as a resource document, they show how to list multiple roles within one company. So I would just take it from that. And then, yeah, I think more impact where we can.
I know.
Yeah, that's the hardest part.
I think maybe especially hard for HR roles because it seems like, I mean, how can you say that any one project? But I'm not sure. But I know I need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're really good at being concise in the bullet points and in the summary, but like you could add a little bit more. Like there is a lot of white space. That was kind of the first thing we all noticed, that I think you do have room to expand on some of the bullet points to give a little bit more detail.
Okay.
And then in education, you should probably put the year you got. Usually they like the year that you got your certification for SHRM. And then you can even, I think there's an ID that we get with it. I don't know for that one, but some people put the ID number so people can check it if they want to. I'm not sure for SHRM if they have that or not. And then you can probably tighten up how you format your Bachelor of Arts in Science so it's closer together a little bit.
Yeah,
And then
something. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, put your skills higher up.
Yeah.
Yeah, something about the formatting of the degree and then the name of the university. Something feels like it's off centered or like it should be one line or right under each other or something.
Yeah. And I don't normally put the major and minor, but this particular job I was applying for specifically wanted a business degree. So I added it in, but I'm curious what people think about that. Seems a little weird to me.
Yeah, I guess I've never seen someone put their minor on there, but I
Yeah,
don't.
I usually don't put my minor. I usually just keep it what my degree was in.
I think it does make sense though, if it's relevant to the job you're applying for, that they're looking for that particular.
That one, since I was adding the major, it is in a kind of an environmental company. So I
Yeah,
That's
tossed it in there, but
specialized.
for a customized resume, I think it's fine to keep those.
Mhm.
And just with your skills, I don't know if you need to say like expert or experienced overly. I think you could save some room if you want on that. And then like SHRM isn't quite a skill. I would just list human resources, or take that out and just keep your human resources, or put other skills you have. Like you could expand
okay.
a bit more in.
Or included, I think I include like a certifications section.
Yeah, because
Um,
generally the education is just your university work, and then
mhm.
often I see a separate section for the
For
certification.
certifications.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's roll on to Eric before we head out. We're gonna
And
get
again, I already know that there's missing the impact, all that. and
Okay.
I'm going back 20 years, so.
Okay.
I feel your pain.
Remy, do you have his from the email?
I will find it.
Thank you everyone for being brave. And I know this is like a very vulnerable thing to share your resume that you only usually submit into a black hole or to recruiters.
Thank you for the feedback. It never would have dawned on me that the name of the company was blurring into it stands out to me. I've been writing it for 6 years.
Yeah, that's what happens. We're so close to this stuff. It's just so valuable to have different eyeballs on it.
It helps. It helps to look at it differently.
Here we go.
The
Okay,
first glance, I think I would, I don't know, I think I would expand or reduce the margin size and maybe add a little more spacing between the lines. Do you know what I mean? Was that, did I say that clearly?
like less
Yeah,
white
so-
space on the edges.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
make the left and right margins smaller so that it gives us more room to.
Yeah, maybe you could add like 3 to 6 points between lines just to make it easier to look at.
Now, one of the questions that I had was, because there were a couple of different positions that, under that MUFG bank, I had different positions. What are the thoughts if you've held multiple positions within a company? Should you, list those? Or again, should you focus specifically more on since I'm, more interested in, talent and development, focus on the performance consultant aspect of it and leave out the fact that I was a, compliance officer.
I would definitely keep it in because I assume it shows progression. That to me says you're probably promoted into the consultant role.
Okay.
You could give it more room within that by keeping those bullets long and shortening the other bullets if you
Yeah.
need.
Mhm.
Or just reducing the number of bullets.
Yeah, and that's still learning related.
Mm-hmm. In one of my old roles, I took out everything that wasn't talent development related and just and only half the job was talent development. So I just ignored the other half of the work I did because it wasn't relevant
Hmm.
to the next job I was applying for.
But I think, like someone mentioned earlier, it's good to avoid having the gap in the years. So having it, but just really shortening the description of it is probably a good compromise.
And obviously we now know I am way too concise, but I would probably just see where you can maybe shorten some of the bullet points up so people can see more of an overview at once, which I know is hard when you've been somewhere so long and you have so much to share.
Right.
And adding the months as well, just as a quick, oh, sorry, I don't know why it keeps doing that when I scroll. The months on the dates of things. And then for down here, if you're looking to make it smaller, you could take out your professional associations. I think they're good. You can just call it Golden Gate chapter. East Bay doesn't exist anymore. They got
Right.
taken down. And then for your technical experience, most people know how to use Microsoft Office. So I would take that out and put in your virtual Zoom and things like that.
Zoom and now Storyline and Articulate, things like
Yeah.
that, now that I have experience or exposure
And I
to
don't
it.
think you
so.
need to qualify it with exposure. I think you can just say Articulate, Rise, and Storyline.
Yeah, well, that kind of came to the situation about the honesty that we had kind of talked about it, when you talked about the percentage numbers and things like that. It's, I have not until recently worked actually in Storyline, and in the application itself, but I have dabbled in it, and worked on some of the projects. I've had people say, oh yeah, this is how this works, and we've worked on it together. So hence the exposure versus
JT, on the job training is just as relevant as classroom or certification.
And Eric, put after your name, put your APTD.
Yes.
And actually Amanda as well, after your name, put the SHRM CP.
Oh.
Yeah, and I would make your name bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, if there's more, or if you thought of something for other people and you don't have their contact information, you can always send it to me and I'll pass it on to them. But with that, maybe I'll stop sharing. And thank you all for coming. You all were great, and I hope you got something out of this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
One quick question, we touched briefly on showcasing that you've done both virtual and live L&D. Any suggestions, or is that in the template that you're going to share with us?
That isn't in the template. No, we don't have that in the template. I would just make sure if you did a project virtually and you're listing it out as one of your accomplishments, say virtually led this in there.
Okay.
And you can put it in your skill section.
Yeah, that's true.
So you can put it in two places.
A little, I don't know, maybe not because you're mentioning it, but it seems a little kind of like saying you use Microsoft Outlook. Doesn't everybody?
It does, except I feel like now we're in such a spot where I don't think you could imagine going into an office and someone not knowing Zoom as well. But I'll say I've been in meetings with people and all of a sudden I'm like, let's use this tool. They don't know what tool I'm talking about. So
and then do you have to say, because technically I've used Teams, but now we use Google, but obviously I can get on Zoom. Do I need to list Teams, Google, Zoom, or just
maybe just say virtual communication software? I don't know,
Okay.
something like that to generalize, but I
Facility.
think for the next year or two, list that we know how to do virtual still, till it
Okay.
comes the norm.
Mhm. And particularly if you've done transition projects,
Right.
transitioning from classroom to virtual, that's, people are
Yeah.
looking for that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Mhm. All right, I'm going to put in the chat. Did you have the PDF version of the resource document, Remy?
Oh, I might have, that might be me. We're gonna put a little
Okay,
resource.
I actually am going to put, I have a Google Doc version of it. I just put in the chat just in case there's anything that I think of to add to it, then this is a growing document. But if it's easier for you to access a PDF, Remy will add it as a PDF into the chat as well. So these are just some of the resources we compiled from things we found online. That template Remy mentioned a few times is linked in there as a Google Doc that you should be able to make a copy of.
Nice.
And I think everything else will be self-explanatory in there.
Yeah, so with that, we'll say thank you. We had a couple slides if people wanted to become members, but you're all members. So we're not gonna pitch anything. So thank you so much for coming, and we'll stay on a little bit longer if you have more questions or, yeah, specific things. We're here, and if there's things later on that you want to talk more about, reach out to us and each other. And for Golden Gate, we're going to be starting consulting services that are going to be more affordable for people looking for resume and LinkedIn reviews. That will be coming up in about a month. So
All right.
if
Thank
that's
you for sharing all
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
knowledge
thank
and
you very much.
Great
getting-
work, Remy.
Good luck, everybody.
Thanks.
Yes, good
Good
luck,
night, everybody.
everyone. Thank you so much.
have a
Thank
good
you
night.
so much. Hey, Nicole, one quick question for you. My niece is also trying to transition out of public school teaching. So I would wonder if you'd share that group that you are
Yes.
part of.
Yes, I can share right now. I will say I have scaled back on the work I was doing with it. I was putting on like weekly live events. We had panel events and like we came together on Zoom, just kind of like this in community to share tips. And I have
Yeah.
stopped that, but I will give my LinkedIn profile. Feel free to have her just reach out to me, and I'll also share the LinkedIn group that I have because there are still some resources in there.
Very cool.
Is she
Yeah.
still currently teaching?
She is. Yes. And as
Yeah, it's a tough
yeah,
time.
it's bad. And she's in junior high, so that's especially tough. And she went to the bathroom the other day and some kids got into her computer